Blood Message is a single-player narrative-driven game that was developed by NetEase's 24 Entertainment Studio. So in this game, which is set during the final years of the Tang Dynasty, which is around 848 AD, you play as a nameless messenger traveling over 1,000 miles to Chang'an. Forgive me if I butchered the pronunciation, but the protagonist is accompanied by his young son, making the journey both a personal and a political one. The story is tied to a historical uprising in Dunhuang. The core gameplay of this seems to revolve around third-person perspective, brutal melee combat, stealth and survival mechanics, and it's built in Unreal Engine 5 with cinematic presentation. I mean, honestly, they killed the graphics and nailed the art direction. As far as the core narrative, from what I can discern, it seems that the narrative follows a father and a son, obviously, and they're crossing a war-torn region, or regions in this game, during an uprising, and the mission is to deliver a message that could determine the fate of their homeland. The journey, it includes deserts, battlefields, collapsing cities. The game also seems to emphasize ordinary people, not just kings or generals, because as I'm looking at this, they don't seem to be people who are of grand import as to those of their counterparts during this time that the game is centered in. And it also seems to put a lot of emphasis on loyalty to both your family and to your country. Now, gameplay-wise, the combat, it appears to be grounded and realistic. It's not exaggerated. It focuses more so on survival rather than domination. I think a likely gameplay loop that we might experience is travel, and then you encounter danger, and then you adapt, and then you survive. I think these mechanics, they kind of hint towards resource management, stealth encounters instead of constant combat, and cinematic scripted sequences in between all of that. And I think the tone of this game is suggestive of less of a power fantasy and more vulnerability and tension. So again, at the surface of all of this seems to be a game that's about duty versus family and survival in a collapsing world. Now, I know nothing about this particular time period that this game is set in, but what I can tell just based off of this trailer is that this is a time where there's very tension filled, there's a lot of turmoil, there's a lot of conflict. So the protagonist, who we don't have the name for, he must be literally like a rock in a hard place because he's caught between both serving his nation but also towards his son's duty. And from what I think happened is that the son is the one who had the message by joining that resistance or whatever force he joined within the game's trailer. And then the father catches up to his son, and then he helps him in aiding the delivery of that message to whoever it needs to be delivered to so that they can save their homeland. So it's this constant sort of balance between duty towards both your son and your family versus to your nation, and which one comes first and which one takes precedent. I think the key question that the game seems to ask is, how do ordinary people matter in history? Because Blood Message, this title, it has a tagline that's accompanied with the game. You can see this on our site. It will probably be on the PlayStation's UI once the game fully launches, and that is, when history forgets, warriors remember. And you kind of see that being indicated by people who are veterans in the real world. You know, people who have actual PTSD, not just people who have the loose definition that most people subscribe to just because you're having a midlife crisis, but people who have actually been through stuff. These people, they never forget what actually happened because they experienced it. They aren't the ones who wrote the textbooks and didn't even experience what had happened. They were there firsthand. So I think this is sort of an ode to people who experience those type of things, where you went through something that was genuinely, legitimately traumatic, and you're not just speaking from a privileged position where you are reporting on that information secondhand. No, this is something that is derived from the source. And it's kind of funny because when it comes to that, history appears to be selective, and most sacrifices, they're never recorded. Now, the message itself, while we don't know what that is in particular, obviously is going to be something that's symbolic, or at least it could be symbolic. And I think that it could potentially symbolize hope in a dying system or a dying world. It could symbolize legacy that's being passed between generations. It could symbolize truth that must survive the chaos that's currently going on and running rampant. And I think the father, if he's carrying the message, that carrying meaning itself through destruction. The son being present there, I think that represents the future witnessing sacrifice, and it kind of reinforces generational memory that line after line after line after line, we don't forget what the initial line did. Their actions do not go unrecognized. And I think deep down, the real message maybe is that even if history forgets you, your actions, they still matter in the grand scheme of things. Now, me personally, I'm already sold in the game because it's action adventure game, and it's a narrative driven game. I love single player story driven games. But the thing that entices me the most is that this game seems to put, or at least allude to, concepts such as legacy. Me in particular, I couldn't care less about legacy because I know once I leave, I'm not going to be able to see what becomes of my legacy anyway. Me personally, I don't want kids. Me personally, I don't really care about leaving anything behind because I'm not going to see what becomes of it after. You can see there are endless tales such as people who adopt or they adapt an IP or somebody's work or someone's life success story, and they bastardize it and they turn it into something that the originator and the creator would not have intended. I'm not going to be here to see what becomes of anything I leave behind. So legacy doesn't overly concern me. So knowing that I have this premise in my head combined with the fact that this game seems to put more of an emphasis on legacy, it'll be interesting to see what my review of this video will look like, what my review of this game will look like, because of how we have conflicting perspectives, or at least we seem to have conflicting perspectives when it comes to leaving something that outlasts you. I also really like the father and son dynamic that this game has, and their relationship seems to be central, not just something that's secondary to the story and the overall goings on of what's happening in this game. And I think likely parallels we'll see is similar or akin to The Last of Us or God of War. And this matters because war stories, they usually focus on scale. This seems to focus on intimacy within that scale, within that chaos. And the son, he'll learn what survival costs, and it becomes a living continuation of the father's actions. So it'll just be interesting to see how that dynamic evolves and plays out as the story unfolds. And it's kind of the game, it seems to be representative of the theme that there are unsung heroes. You see what I'm saying? Like the developers, they explicitly emphasize actually that ordinary people smaller than dust. That's what they said. And this flips the typical narratives from, from developers utilizing chosen ones or a legendary warrior or this prominent protagonist. It diverts away from that propensity for developers to do that, and it goes more so towards a messenger, a father, a survivor, an ordinary person. It's a deeper idea that history is built on people that we never even learn about. There are things in our own history. I live in America. There are things in American history, in Japanese history, in whatever country you may live in. There are aspects of your very own history that you don't know and you never will know because, number one, the books are recorded and written by the victors, and there are always going to be people who did something to turn the tides of whatever strenuous situation or time that we went through, and we'll never know the true extent of what they did or what their names even are. I think sort of the comparisons that we'll see with this between other gamers in the community, it'll probably include things like Uncharted, Assassin's Creed, Ghost of Tsushima. Believe it or not, I never played the former two actually. And from Reddit, from the reactions I've seen, they also say, Uncharted, Assassin's Creed, God of War, sort of combined. I think the key difference and differentiator though is that those games focus on heroes shaping history. Blood Message focuses on people trying to survive it. And potentially, I think a deeper meaning could be that the journey itself could be the message. The act of delivering it is what could give it meaning. Even if the message fails, the journey still mattered. The sacrifice still existed. If you go on a journey across your country through multiple regions trying to deliver a message, but people are constantly attacking you and trying to kill you, well, that's going to resonate with you because your life was in danger. And I think this kind of connects to a more philosophical theme that meaning is not necessarily always in the outcome, but it can be derived from the act of trying in it of itself. For example, me, when it comes to all the things I'm trying to accomplish in my life, becoming a registered nurse, real estate investor, becoming monetized on YouTube. At present, I have like 21 subscribers. Even though the end goal is to just be monetized, just get to 500, as long as I put the time and the effort and the work in, where I start at the 21 to where I end at 500, while I might necessarily get that outcome to get meaning, just by virtue of trying, I'm going to fall somewhere in the middle. So ultimately, that is some degree of progress, and you can derive meaning from that progress. So there are a lot of parallels between real life and working hard, and a title like Blood Message, which just tells you that just try and something may come out of this, even if it's not what you initially intended it for it to be. Blood Message isn't trying to tell a story about victory. It's trying to tell a story about endurance, about memory, about human significance and chaos. If done right, this could be one of the most emotionally grounded historical games we've seen. I'm excited about this game. Anything that is single player driven with narrative focus and a good story, I love it. I'm already signed up for it. And the cinematics in this game look incredible. The acting looks incredible. The combat looks realistic, not just some sort of fantasy based thing or something that's not necessarily representative of an actual fight. This is, you can feel the survival and the tension in the gameplay. And there's nothing wrong with having powers and abilities and stuff like that, but there's just something about seeing something that is more realistic and it just grounds you more while you're playing it. So we'll probably get more information about this next month. I mean, Summer Games Fest is coming up. Can't wait for it to see what they announce and what's coming forward. So just let me know you guys have any comments, questions, what you think about this game. Are you going to buy it when it comes out? Whatever you have to say, I'm open to reading you guys' thoughts. I'm Harlem. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.